Good afternoon also from my side in this very important and fascinating session this afternoon. We are a little bit late already, and so we should continue immediately with the next talk, which will be given by Veerle Coupé from the University Medical Center in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and she will talk about model-based comparison of measures for longitudinal screening adherence. We're looking forward to your talk.
Good afternoon, thank you. Thank you as well for the invitation to present our work here, also on behalf of my co-authors. I hope I managed to move the slides up well, which is a bit of a challenge. So longitudinal screening adherence is a key indicator of screening effectiveness in fit-based colorectal cancer screening programs. At present, different measures for adherence are reported, and this hampers international comparison. To tackle the issue, recently the ICSN CRC screening working group reviewed measures for reporting repeated adherence to fit. They compared estimates of the different adherence measures within the Italian population-based screening programs. And this comparison was presented last year at the ICSN screening meeting in Rotterdam. Building on this work, we studied the impact of using different adherence measures on model-based projections of long-term screening outcomes. Our aim was to contribute to decision-making concerning the optimal longitudinal adherence measure to be used in order to obtain the most accurate long-term projections. To obtain predictions of long-term impact of CRC screening, ideally, models are fed with the proportion of individuals following each possible yes-no pattern over time, over all rounds. Here you see an abstract of this type of information for 4 rounds of the Italian fit-based program in the region Reggio Emilia, which was presented last year at the ICSN. So for example, the first row with the red cells represents the group of individuals who never attended, which was 23% of the 72,980 participants. In real-world programs, however, this manner of reporting adherence is not really feasible because of the high number of rounds and the high number of proportions that would lead to. So summarizing measures are more practical, but they should accurately represent a true observed pattern of adherence. So 6 summarizing measures were therefore presented by the ICSN CRC screening working group. And we review here their definitions and the values for the Reggio Emilia region. So overall adherence is defined as the average adherence over all 4 rounds. This was 65% in Reggio Emilia. Adherence per round is defined as the average adherence per round. The rescreening rate at the bottom left is defined as the probability of participating for those who participated in their previous round. And full program adherence is defined as the proportion of individuals who participate in all rounds. And this was 50.9% in Reggio Emilia. All other individuals are then taken together. The measure regularity classifies individuals into 3 categories, namely individuals who have never participated, those who have participated at least once but not in all rounds, and those who have always participated. And then finally, the measure number of times participated categorizes individuals according to the number of rounds they participated in. For each of these adherence measures, we assess how accurately they represent the observed frequency of all possible patterns. And we did this by calculating the predicted frequency of each specific yes-no pattern based on each adherence measure. And subsequently, we used the chi-square goodness of fit measure to assess the distance between the true observed pattern and the one expected under the summarizing measure. Subsequently, we assess the long-term model predicted screening effectiveness using the truly observed pattern as well as the expected patterns under each adherence measure. To obtain these long-term predictions, we use the ASCCA model. We simulated 7 scenarios in which we only adapted how adherence was described in the model. And the observed adherence pattern was the reference scenario. The 6 scenarios represented the 6 summarizing measures. So the abbreviation of ASCCA stands for the adenoma and serrated pathway to colorectal cancer model. It includes both the serrated pathway and the adenoma pathway. For this study, we set up the model to simulate the 4 rounds of biennial fit screening starting at age 55, which corresponds to the program in the region Reggio Emilia. So here you see the results. This graph shows the chi-square statistic representing the distance between the true observed pattern and the patterns constructed using each summarizing measure. Larger chi-square values indicate more deviance from the true pattern. And as you can see, the measure number of times participated is most accurate, followed by regularity and rescreening. The measures adherence per round and overall adherence are least accurate. On this slide, you see the impacts on projections of long-term effectiveness, both incidence and mortality. Under the reference scenario, the ASCCA model predicted a reduction in CRC incidence of 18% and in mortality of 24% due to 4 rounds of fit screening. There was no noticeable difference in CRC incidence and mortality for the adherence measure number of times participated, and differences were extremely small for the measures regularity and rescreening. For the measures adherence per round and overall adherence, the impact of screening on CRC mortality was overestimated with roughly 2.5%. Note that the ordering of the measures according to impact on screening outcomes is actually equal to the ordering with respect to the chi-square statistic. So to conclude, to make model-based projections of long-term screening impact, assumptions that are made in the model with respect to adherence pattern matter. They influence a model's estimate of screening impact. Most accurate measures are the numbers of time participated, rescreening, and regularity. But these do require adherence data on an individual level. If only group level data is available, then only less accurate measures can be used, such as overall adherence and adherence per round. There was one adherence measure reported by the ICSN expert working group that we did not include in this evaluation, and that was the proportion of time covered, which is defined as the number of days an individual is compliant with screening divided by the number of days in the cohort. And we did not use this measure because calculation requires extensive follow-up data, and this measure is somewhat difficult to interpret. And finally, one could argue that predicted screening impact is only mildly affected by the choice of adherence measure. After all, we observed a highest impact of 2.5% difference in model predicted mortality. But this difference is actually of the same order of magnitude as some differences observed between trial arms or between strategies in model evaluation. For example, an Australian model study by Liu and co-authors showed an additional mortality reduction between 2 and 4% when starting fit screening at age 45 instead of 50. So we believe it's important to promote consistent use of a widely endorsed accurate adherence measure. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions if there is time, but I'm not sure about that. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this very interesting and excellent talk. We can just allow one question, and the first one came actually from Iris Lamstorp-Vogeler, who congratulates you for a very nice presentation and analysis, and asks whether for long-term outcomes it is more important to predict adherence to later invitations correctly than to predict overall adherence correctly.
Sorry, whether it's more accurate, whether it's more important to predict
adherence to later invitations correctly than to predict overall adherence correctly.
It seems to be most important to report correctly the proportion of individuals who never attend and who attend always. So it's not so much later invitations or the exact number of invitations, but it's particularly important how many people did never attend and how many people did always attend. I hope this answers the question.
Thank you very much.